Hey, welcome to the Early Morning Musician. This show is for artists committed to creating in the margins.
Before their day jobs, after the kids are asleep.
From the business trip or the basement.
We get it, and we're going to share everything we've learned along the way.
Welcome to
The Early Morning Musician.
Hey everybody, we're Ryan and Carissa at the Early Morning Musician.
The Early Morning Musician.
And we're excited that you're here. This is our first time using TikTok Live.
We are, so we're probably going to mess it up, but we're giving it our best go.
Yeah, so if you happen to come across this, we'd love to know that you were here because we don't even know if we're going to be able to see this later.
Yeah, and like feedback, I don't know, I have no clue how this sounds on the internet, I feel like we've never done this.
You mean the sound quality?
Yeah, I mean, we might sound terrible, we might be quiet, we might be super loud and clipping, so...
Yeah,
if you
that kind
listen,
of feedback helps.
Honest feedback, hurt my feelings. I know you're not afraid to, world. You've done a lot of that.
Roast our appearances as well.
Yeah, just roast our clothes so hard.
Please, looks max us. Tell us what we need to do to look better. Actually, today, if you're tuning in, on YouTube and Spotify, we're talking about why we didn't make Christian music as Christian people.
Yes. It feels like every single Christian musician I know is doing very Christian music.
It's hard not to. It's hard not to because when you're, anybody with a faith, that faith is probably the most important thing in your life. And for Christians, it's the most important thing to us.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So it's hard to even justify as a Christian. I remember having this experience when I was in youth group when I was 13 or 14 years old. I always had a really Broadway style voice from a really early age. My favorite singers were Barbra Streisand and Bernadette Peters. And I remember telling this youth staff person I had that my dream at the time was to go on Broadway and to be a musical theater girl.
Yeah.
And very seriously, this guy was like, if you ever go and use your voice for anything but Jesus, then it's wrong and it's a waste. And I remember thinking, that's the truth then.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the truth. And there's this very clear line between what is for Jesus and what's not for Jesus. Mm-hmm. And the things that are for Jesus are the things that are about Jesus.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
The things that are not for Jesus are the things that are about anything else.
There's also a fixation on using his name. Like that, I see a lot of people get hung up on that. Even I forget what it was. I was watching maybe a Corey Asbury. He has what is it? He plays Fortnite, a video game thing. And I was kind of scrolling through some of the comments. I don't even know why I was watching it. I don't play Fortnite, but it just came up.
Right.
Went through some comments, and someone was there were several comments complaining about, I guess he released a new song or something recently, and it didn't say the name of Jesus specifically.
Right.
And everybody was just hardcore. This isn't even a Christian song. This isn't even a worship song. And I was like, sheesh, homie's just trying to play some late night Fortnite and relax and the church has just come out to get him,
Yeah. Right. So it's not even enough to make music about God. It has to be, there are specifics. It's got to meet a certain standard.
Got to say his name. It has to have, everybody's divided on theology. So whether or not a song is theologically correct, there's a lot of debate.
Yeah. You can't say sloppy wet kiss even in 2024.
No. Still complaining about that. When did that happen? Was that 2000?
I don't know, 2000?
A long time ago. And we're 24 years later still complaining about it.
So I think for us, I always wanted growing up to do worship music and to do Christian music. And we did 3, 4 tiny projects in our 20s.
We had several.
We were 22 and we did From Hand to Fowler, which was...
Wow.
Do you remember that?
Forgot that existed.
Yes, we did. And we set off a giant smoke bomb for our first...
Did we release any music under that project?
No, we released YouTube.
Zero?
We released
zero.
We released YouTube covers.
Oh my God.
was the era.
That's true.
It was the era of YouTube covers.
For you Gen Zers out there, that's what YouTube was first for musicians. Like, that was clearly the path forward. You covered big songs. If it was a fast song, you did it slow. If it was a slow song, you did it fast.
You put your own twist on a song.
And that was what YouTube was full of for a good, I want to say 5 years. We were on that wagon.
And we had the, like, I've been wondering if you guys remember Daniela Andrade. Do you remember her?
In a minute.
I know. She came to my mind the other day. She was like the OG YouTube cover, on just her on an electric guitar. She was the Lana Del Rey of YouTube.
Yeah.
And
she was great.
Lana.
She was great.
She was fantastic.
Really good.
And so we were inspired by her, thinking that we could, maybe start a Christian music thing that way. So we had a YouTube channel where we covered, do you remember when we had like photography backdrops? And we would set up a photography backdrop.
Vaguely.
and I would put in my super blonde hair extensions.
I remember doing some, like a Christmas song or something.
Yeah, we did "Oh Holy Night."
Yeah, like a weird
version. But we also
version.
did like Cornerstone.
Yes, a weird version.
Yeah,
that was always the thing, a weird version.
A Gunger song.
Yeah, Gunger was big back then too.
Yes.
Wow, I'm having a blast from the past right now.
We haven't thought about this. I mean, this was 10 years ago.
Wow.
So we did that, and then we right after that did a 5-song EP that was.
But that was under a different project,
right? And it was like dream pop Christian, which was there's no market for. I mean,
none.
Let me know in the comments if you're a dream pop Christian music listener.
You say that, and it's funny because, like, I've actually seen a couple, probably recently, Christian artists on TikTok making very similar style of music, and it had like a lot of likes, like 250,000. I was like, sheesh, like we were a little too early on that.
No, we were just a little bit too
crappy. See, but in early 2000, it was a different ball game when it came to production because software was way more expensive.
It was hard.
It wasn't as good. We were so broke.
Oh, for sure.
So, like, there was no chance. I think the microphone we recorded on was like a $50 microphone. Not that you have to have a super expensive microphone, but I probably wouldn't try to record an EP on one $50 microphone.
Well, I remember like our studio. Remember, you set up like PVC pipes, and we put quilts over the pipes, and
it wasn't PVC pipes. It was room dividers because we used to live in a studio apartment, and we used room dividers.
We used to live in a garage
to create little rooms. So I used those room dividers, and then I draped blankets over them to make them thicker. So because the room was like hardwood floors, there was nothing on the walls.
Yeah,
trying to help with the echo.
And this was the first time
awesome.
I was really recording in a studio type situation, and that's when you learn that you're not a good singer for the first time.
Oh my gosh, it tells all.
No, it wasn't the first time. I neglected to say that when I was 16, I was in a different Christian band.
Same.
And we actually met in a traveling Christian band.
Right.
But together, we did more Christian bands.
So many.
If you count the ones before we were married, that's 5 Christian bands, different projects.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
Yeah. So, the 5-song EP, we really thought that we might get discovered?
I didn't. I knew at the time that you thought that. You thought that, like, we're going to put this out and someone's going to contact us.
Yes.
I remember at the time thinking, that is a lofty idea. I just hope that I can be proud of it at the end, because I was producing for the first time. So I was extremely insecure. And what was crazy is I was using Ableton Live Lite, which at that time, I think it only allowed 16 tracks.
Right.
For everything.
Right.
So instruments, vocal production, percussion, synth, everything had to be only 16 tracks.
But for people who are not producers, how many tracks do you use now?
I had over 300 on the song that I just finished last week.
Right.
Over 300 tracks.
Imagine.
Trying to do it. And you could hear it in the music. It was extremely simple.
It sounded like
had to be.
Like a ringtone? Was it polyphonic?
No. Kinda.
We were trying to, I don't know if you guys remember Bat for Lashes. She was a big influence on us at the time. We were trying to do a Bat for Lashes, Florence and the Machine type Christian project.
And looking back at that, like, the way I know her production has so many tracks in it because it's so weird, and it has like these random one-off sounds in it. Trying to do that with 16 tracks was just not Not
But we
even
didn't know.
had no clue.
We didn't know. And were you proud of it in the end?
I was, yeah.
Okay.
I was. You know, is the first thing I ever did. You know?
I'm proud that you were proud.
Yeah. I mean, it got done.
Right. So then after that, we stopped telling people about that EP. And as we made new friends, people would be like, hey, oh, you have an EP? And we'd be like, no.
We don't.
And we don't want you to go listen to it.
We bought one box of CDs because we're like, somebody's going to want a hard copy.
Mm-hmm.
And we carried that one box of CDs around, like moving like
Across
5
the
different
country.
locations for like a decade.
Across the country.
And then I remember the day I threw it away. I was like, I hated that freaking thing. I threw it in a dumpster. I was like, I hope that all these freaking CDs burn. I just hope someone burns them and it just goes away. And I have one somewhere in this office somewhere.
Yes, we have one that we keep for like memory's sake.
Yeah, for sure.
But anyway, we're talking too much about the stuff that we've done in the past. We then
Why are we not? That's
most recently we did a CCM Contemporary Christian project, and that was just like
Color House
4 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago.
And so our last effort at a Christian music thing was recent, and we were trying to do Christian pop, and I think that our hope ultimately, if it was going to be successful, was what, radio? Like, was it radio Christian?
CCM, yeah.
Okay,
radio.
So, but we wanted it to have personality, and we wanted it to be spunky. But anytime we would release something, we would have this feeling. How would you describe the feeling? It was like, is this cheesy?
Yeah, it was either in Christian music. For those of you who don't know, not all, probably I'm sure that not all of our listeners are, because of the music we're making now. But there's 2 kinds of Christian music. There's like CCM, which is typically feels kind of like major, maybe kind of dramatic, and it's like on the radio.
It's inspiring storytelling Christian music.
Yeah, and it's a very clean style of production. So like very clear vocals. It's good songwriting, really. Like it's very, very catchy, but it's like one thing. And then like the other side of like Christian music is the worship side, obviously, which is, tends to be a bit more minor. It's typically recorded live.
Congregational.
It's got the congregation is singing, you're mixing in room mics. It feels, honestly, like I could be wrong about this, but I feel like the Christian world has really killed the game when it comes to producing live records. Our live records do sound incredible.
Phenomenal. And they have for 20 years.
Yeah. We've been crushing it. But if you don't have that, if you don't have a massive church, a stadium full of people
who know your songs
and can sing along, it's almost impossible to do that sound in like a bedroom. So
also like spiritually, just the philosophy of worship is it was kind of a sobering realization when I realized like worship is congregational. I could write a worship song, but I can't execute like like a truly worship record for the church alone.
Yeah.
Even if I wanted, I could do it like a devotional kind of record, like a singer-songwriter devotional kind of record. And I still would like to do that someday. That's still a dream for me. But realizing that you really have to have a very specific set of circumstances to do worship music was like, oh man, like that would really have to, things would really have to align for that to happen for anyone.
Yeah. So it wasn't, we backed out of that. So we were like,
we can't do worship. So
CCM.
We're going to go CCM.
We prefer, the kind of music that we liked doesn't lend itself to the same style of production that is happening in CCM, so it felt cheesy.
Well, yeah.
Go ahead.
Say more. No, it's okay. Say more.
It just felt, when you take something like, Color House that we were doing it was very kind of like experimental in the instrumentation. It wasn't like your just like typical, like worship, acoustic guitars and drums. We were doing like a lot of like drum machines, a lot of like crazier sounding synths, a lot of like layered and stacked vocals, a lot more harmonies. And when you put all that together and then you put, it's kind of like a happier sounding production. And then we
love happy sounding music. And I think
major.
This is, yeah.
We do like major.
I think this is something that we realized was fighting.
Yeah. So when you pair this like major sounding music with these like very happy Christian-y themed words.
And I've got a real clean vocal.
Yeah.
And it was really a pop.
When you pushed it all together, it become this extremely cheesy sounding thing that always like we tried so hard to make it work, but it just clearly was not working. And after what do we do? 3 songs, Color House?
Yeah, I think we did 3 songs. And I was trying to experiment some with the lyrics as well, because I love lyric writing.
Yeah.
And I really like writing things that haven't heard it said this way.
Yeah.
That's what I like finding. So like our second song, oh my goodness. So our first song was called 77 Times.
Yeah.
And it was based on the scripture about,
of course,
right?
Christian music has to be based theologically correct.
And 77 times as a hook, that was the hook, was the word 77 times.
Yeah.
So that's unusual.
That is.
And asking people to get on board with a hook that is just saying 77 times.
Sell.
But that's a hard sell.
Hard sell.
And then like the next one was, the hook was literally the word domino.
Yes.
And
now I can get more on board with that. Even from like what we're doing now, I'm kind of like, domino is kind of a cool sounding word.
We have considered redoing domino.
I could redo that song now, and I think I could make it work.
Right.
Anyway.
And then we had one called Fire in the Night. And that one's probably my favorite one.
Ooh, I do like the vibe of that one. The sound, not the song altogether, but the sound, the vibe is nice.
But I think that we really tried hard to make that work. But, the feedback that we were getting, and it's not all about feedback, but the feedback that we were getting was from adults saying, my kids love this music. And that was the main feedback I remember getting about that project, was that kids were really resonating with it.
Yeah, and when you heard it, when I got that feedback several times, I then went and listened, and I was like, oh. Yeah. I hear it now. I get it.
Right. And it was coming off kind of kids bop.
Kind of, yeah.
Yes. And when we realized that, it was kind of like the same realization as the worship realization, which is like, this is actually hard to make music that we like, that is genuine to who we are, and it work with, thematically.
Yeah.
There's a really specific sound that you have to adopt to do CCM. And even worship songs have to be covered and made into CCM to be played on Christian radio.
They're reproduced.
For Christian radio, because there is a very specific sound that you have. Mm-hmm. And so we were really faced with, do we make that specific sound? Can we make that specific sound? And we could not.
Well, yeah, I think we realized we probably could have created the CCM Christian sound, but we did not want to.
That's what I mean.
We didn't want to.
Internally, we felt like we could not.
So then we stepped back and we were like, okay, hold on a second. Who are we trying to get in front of here? Who is this music serving? And when I feel like, for me, when I just stumbled across that question, like, who am I actually trying to get in front of, and what am I trying to do? It started to lead me down the path of, actually, I think I'm going to step out of the Christian genre and just make music.
Right. Which is not something that we've seen people successfully do often with their faith intact.
Yeah.
So it's, we don't feel that it's risky to our faith, because our faith is
good. It's not.
Nothing has changed there, except for in a growth trend, but nothing has changed there, to the negative. And then there's also like, well, even if your faith is good now, if you
what if you get rich and famous?
If you don't do Christian music forever,
lose your mind,
then you're at risk of doing whatever happened to Evanescence, or which I think they denied that they were ever Christian at this point. But back in the day, they were my first concert that I ever went to, and I think
incredible.
And there was at least a strong rumor that, and they're from Arkansas as well. So we're from Arkansas.
That's our claim to fame. Evanescence.
They're kind of like hometown
Thank
heroes.
you, Amy. We appreciate your contribution.
Yes, we were going to their small concerts at like the local community college. That's where I saw them. And the rumor was that they were Christian in the beginning, and then you see these bands that start off Christian and then become successful, and whatever, you guys understand. And so there's definitely we haven't seen other people really do this, at least that we know of. We can't find good examples to justify.
Right. No, I honestly, I couldn't tell you a good example necessarily. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
I think that there are more. I think that now that we know what we're looking for, there are definitely more. And I think that it's growing,
Yeah.
It's a market that's pioneering. But
yeah, I think for me, same. All those concerns existed, but I think at a certain point I was like, hey, I trust myself. I'm not like, I know what motivates me in life. So I just detached this like, oh, it has to be this. Like music for some reason has to be this. Because, at a certain point in my life, like I was working a secular job, like at the time I was, selling cars and then selling technology. And it never crossed my mind like, well, I got to sell computers for Jesus. I got to sell technology for Jesus. It never crossed my mind. And I was spending so much of my time doing that. And I was like, I'm not worried about losing my faith doing that. So why would I lose my faith or something if I just choose to make music, just music? Still, upholds or abides by like all the same moral standards, but it's just not necessarily about Jesus or about the Bible. It's just about our lives or things that we find interesting or just whatever we want to write about. And when I made that break, all of a sudden it was like, oh, I can write about anything. And who can I serve? And I think for me, that was really when the transition of music becoming a service to people. I've talked about that some in past episodes. That's really important to me, that music serves my audience. It's not, I don't want to do just like a self-centered, like, look at me, look at how amazing I am music, but I want to do a music that people like engage with emotionally. And
you don't just want to do 30-minute guitar solos?
No. I mean, if I could, that'd be great, but I'm not good enough.
That doesn't serve.
Right. It doesn't serve. So I'm trying to serve it up.
But I think that was a super difficult transition for me. And you kind of processed that internally. You were taking me by the hand and saying, well, what if you thought about it this way? And in the early days of realizing that my actual dream of creating worship music had not like panned for me, I was grieving that. And I was also like, but I don't think it's right to spend all of this time creating something that is of no eternal value.
Yeah.
And what a waste it would be to create all of this and it be of no eternal weight. And Ryan, you were kind of like, what, you asked the question a second ago, what is our message? And if we were to get in front of someone, who would we want it to be? And what would we want to say? But more kind of maybe like deeper, what is the stuff that's actually inside of us that we have to give? What are our experiences? What is a message that we want to leave with the world? And we kind of thought to ourselves that worship music, Christian music is really, there are exceptions for sure, but it largely is in an echo chamber that Christians listen to Christian music.
And not in a bad way, in like it's an appropriate thing. Like worship music is for the church. It's for the church. I think we oftentimes think of worship music as like it will evangelize. Like if we write a good enough worship song, it will change the world. And I guess it could, and maybe some have in some ways, but like primarily those songs are for the church, and that's totally fine. But that's not necessarily what we were trying to do with our like bedroom pop music. We weren't trying to get people to sing our songs on Sunday morning. So to continue trying to force our genre into that box didn't make sense.
And then when we were asking ourselves the question, do we want to create music that is on Christian radio for the purpose of encouraging Christians in a way that they are probably already being encouraged by the song before and after us? Or do we want to get in front of people who may never have contact with people who are of our faith and engage with them and connect with them and have an opportunity to be in those environments? And there have been, I think, some people that we've shared this with that are like, psh,
bad idea.
Please,
don't do that.
That's not what your heart is. That's not what your motive is.
Yeah.
But I have loved that since I was really young. I was in a certain Christian band when I was a teenager. It was what you might call like a covert Christian band, maybe more like in the way that Evanescence could have been or was perceived. It was that we played in bars and we played at like local joints, and then we hoped to be able to talk to people after the show. And it was more of a seed planting situation than like a congregational situation.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that. And then as I got into my 20s and my mid-20s, I loved going to places like Burning Man. And I really found a big piece of myself there that I really, really enjoyed these like seed planting environments. And I think that a lot of the model that we've been shown as Christians is like, well, you need to plant it, water it, and harvest it at one time, or it's not valid, Mm-hmm. But I don't think that that's biblical,
Right.
And I really enjoyed that initial seed planting. And even now, I'm a hobby gardener. I cannot stop. I just bought 3 new garden beds. I love gardening so bad.
You do.
But I love, one of my favorite parts, maybe my favorite part, period, is the seed planting. I love like getting this tiny little thing, tiny little what it could be.
Yeah.
And planting it and covering it up and burying it and leaving it for an extended period of time and seeing what grows. And I kind of have a lot of faith in that process. So it ended up being true to who I had been all along, to get in front of people and connect and love and talk about healthy marriage and talk about family, talk about remaining faithful, and talk about perseverance amidst trials, and talk about hope.
Yeah, and trials and like negative things that we've went through. We've got a couple songs out right now that are a bit more on the sad side because that was part of the process that we were in, and it meant something to us. And I think that really encapsulates what Geraldine is for us. Is it is a means of connecting with people. It's a means of people, hearing something and like feeling seen and feeling like, hey, I'm not the only one experiencing these things.
Yeah.
And maybe, a break from like, maybe they're in one situation and they're like, hey, like I heard this song, it was inspiring or it touched me in a deep way where, they might not listen to a worship song, but just a random song, or maybe they're out at the bar one night and, we're playing. Like that would be the hope and the dream someday to like really like get out in front of people and just connect.
Yeah.
That's really the goal. So if you're curious about Geraldine and what we're about and why we've chosen what we've chosen, that's it. We want to connect people genuinely, with who we actually are.
Yeah.
So.
And we're about out of time. So if you enjoyed this podcast, then click like, click subscribe, whatever, follow, notifications.
Please do that.
Share it with a friend. And if you're on TikTok Live here with us, then like we'll check on you in a minute.
Yeah.
We'll check on you to see how you're doing.
Yeah.
But let us know what you thought about this episode. We love you guys and we're grateful for you. Bye.
Bye.